comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So I'm just going to get straight into the Ask Boyle today because it's a little bit longer. I'm not fired from work, so I have to get to work tomorrow. I'm exhausted. I'm over it. Every muscle in my body is sore. Every fucking joint is aching. The slog is becoming real and it's becoming too much. Anyway, you know what time it's Ask Boyle time. Oh God. So if you have a question you would like answered by one of the greatest waterproofers of this generation or any generation, then head to my website, boylewaterproofing.com. That's all I am now. That's what I am. That's my identity. I'm just a waterproofer. That's all I think about. I was actually thinking about it when I went to sleep the other night. I did a fucking joint. Oh, that no one even knows what that means. Anyway, I did this beautiful connection joint and I was daydreaming about it. That's how sick I am. That's how fucking infiltrated I am. I went to sleep thinking about how sweet that connection was. I had to shake my head to erase it. I was like, all right, get out of there. Stop thinking about this shit. But it can't last much longer. If I ever go back and listen to this this last year and a half, I'm just going to be like, what the fuck was I thinking? Waterproofing? How did that happen? Anyway, these are the detours you take. So go to my website for fucking questions that you need answered, boylecomedy.com. While you're there, send in some fucked up Fridays. Mainly just send in some fucked up Fridays. boylecomedy.com, you know where it is. Anyway, let's get to this week's Ask Boyle. So, this week's Ask Boyle was sent in to one of the longest serving DeGennies of the podcast, Jen out there in LA. And here it is. So I think I have a perfect Le Boyle question. She actually spelt it L-A Boyle. It's actually L-E Boyle. Le. Anyway, could also just be a dumb question, but I've wondered for a while what the exact reasons are that most people, pretty much globally, can't afford to live even a slightly financially secure life. My grandparents, for instance, had no education to speak of. My grandma never graduated high school and sold furniture for a living, and my grandfather never made it past the 8th grade and worked as a low-level unskilled laborer. Yet they raised 3 kids comfortably and bought multiple homes. The days when a soda cost a nickel and a carton of eggs cost a quarter. So what the hell happened? What exactly went so catastrophically wrong that led us here? And is there any hope of a correction? Well, Jenny, you have come to the right place. So pull up a chair, young lady, and let me tell you a tale of inflation. It pretty much started when Richard Nixon took the US off the gold standard. That's technically when it started, 1971, the end of the gold standard. That's when all the charts started going fucking chaos, but it technically started long before that in World War One. So in World War One, what happened was England was the reserve currency of the world, the pound. And they wanted to get into a war with Germany and they needed to fight that war. No one was interested in paying to fund that war. The citizenship wasn't keen. No one was keen. So to fund that war, the English government had to take England off the gold standard, because all wars are fought through inflation. The American Civil War, the Revolutionary War, Vietnam, World War I, World War II, all of them. Inflation, money printing. That's how wars are paid for. It's just stealing your savings. Inflation, which is money printing, expanding the money supply. That's inflation, just expanding the money supply. So if you take the world right now and it has a certain amount of money and a certain amount of goods you can buy with that money, the price of things are a certain price. If you double the money supply without doubling the amount of goods to buy, then everything is going to cost more, because all you've done is expand the money supply. You put more money in the system, so things are just naturally going to become more expensive. People really, really need to understand the concept of inflation. It's fundamental to absolutely everything that's going on. So do you understand the inflation part? Just very simply, if you have a fixed amount of goods and then you double the money in the system, the price of everything is going to double. But what also happens when you just print money, expand the money supply, is debt becomes cheaper because the number of dollars in the system is much more and your debt is fixed. So you have more money just to pay the debt. So in a system of inflation, debt is actually good, but it steals people's savings. So if you just have savings in your account, then you're fucked, because if they double the money supply, which they have done over the last 4 or 5 years, doubled it, then your savings are cut in half. The purchasing power of your savings are cut in half, but your debt is also cut in half. So it encourages debt. Anyway, I digress. All wars are inflation wars. They just print money to pay for the wars. So in 1914, in World War I, the British went off the gold standard, and the idea of the gold standard is every pound can be redeemed for gold. So what they did when they took the pound off the gold standard to fund World War I is they suspended the gold standard, printed an absolute shitload of money to pay for the war, and then once the war was done, they tried to go back onto the gold standard, but the problem was they'd printed so much fucking money that it was just ridiculous to go back on the gold standard. People would see how fucking crazy it was. Let's say in 1914, an ounce of gold cost £1 or something. These are just hypothetical. I don't know the exact figures. After World War I, if England tried to get back onto the gold standard and every single pound note was redeemable for gold, then an ounce of gold would cost £1,000. These aren't exact figures. These are just fucking numbers. But I don't think it was too much different from that. So they couldn't go back onto the gold standard. So they went on to a sort of fake gold standard. Then there was World War II, which was another inflation war. There were war bonds, but it was just all printed. And then after World War II, we went on to the Bretton Woods system, which was basically the populations of the countries can't redeem their notes for gold, but the countries will be settling in gold. So the US dollar would become the reserve currency of the world, and the countries of the world could use those US dollars to redeem for gold from the US. And that worked for about 3 days before the US started printing money. So the population obviously were completely fucked over, but the countries was still on the gold standard. International trade was settled in USD, and USD was redeemable for gold. And then what happened was the US got into the Vietnam War, and like all wars, the US were printing mega amounts of money just to fund the slaughter of the Vietnamese people. And what happened then was the French started catching on. The French were like, hey, how the fuck are the US paying for this? Something's going on here. And what the French did, the sneaky frogs, they got a shit ton of their USD, their US dollars, and redeemed them for gold. And at this stage, the US was still trying to give off the illusion that they're not printing money. So they sent a shipload of gold to France. And then France were like, all right, let's do this again. Let's redeem some of our USD for gold. And they sent another ship over. And then Germany were like, hey, I think I might redeem some of these USD for gold as well. And Germany tried to do it. And then the US were like, hold on a second. We're going to run out of fucking gold in a minute. We can't keep doing this. And then in 1971, Richard Nixon temporarily suspended the gold standard. You can see the fucking address to the nation. He did. It was meant to be temporary, and 1971, so what's that, 54 years ago. We're still waiting to get back on it. But once Richard Nixon took the US off the gold standard, and the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world, it was no longer tethered to any fucking reality at all. And you can see it in every single chart. There's actually a good website. It's called What the Fuck Happened in 1971.com. And it just shows you every single fucking chart. And the inflection point is 1971. So from 1971, from the suspension of the gold standard, you can just print now. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to mine gold and hold gold in reserve. You can just print, and that's it. It's called fiat currency. We all know what that is now. It's money that's decreed by the government. It actually has no intrinsic value. That's what makes me laugh when people are like, Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. It's like, the cunts just add zeros now on a ledger somewhere in the treasury. Like, they just print money. It's just fucking wished into existence. The US dollar and all currencies are the actual Ponzi scheme. Anyway, if you look up the chart, US national debt, you can see it there. The US national debt was sort of like humming along. It was very, very low up until 1914, obviously. And then during the 1930s and 40s, it went up a little bit. Like, it just minuscule. On this chart, it looks minuscule. And then obviously during the Vietnam War, it was going up. And then 1971 to now, it's basically straight up and to the right with no breaks. Just vertical almost. And that's national debt. But if you invert that graph or that chart, that is actually a chart of the decline of purchasing power of the dollar. So if you just turn it upside down and invert it, you'll see what's happened to the dollar since 1971. It's down almost vertical. So the problem is the inflation, the expansion of the money supply just constantly. It's roughly 7 to 10% a year for the last 54 years, with bigger fucking bumps up like COVID and all that. COVID from 2021, I think it was, to 2023, they increased the money supply by 40%. So if you had $100,000 in your savings account, they just took $40,000 off you. But the inflation is why everyone is getting wiped out. Like, for example, I said from 2020 to 2023, they increased the money supply by 40%. Now, for you to cover that 40%, you either need to work 40% harder in those 3 years. So if you're doing a full-time job, you basically have to get a second full-time job just to stay normal, or a fucking pretty good drop shipping side hustle to stay afloat, or you need to get a 40% raise in those years. So you need to work 40% harder just to stay where you are, which is very difficult if you're already fucked. Or you need to get a raise, which is also hard because wages are sticky. They don't generally go up as much as inflation does. Well, they never go up as much as inflation. They adjust it, some companies, but they only adjust it to the government mandated CPI, which is usually around 2 to 3%. And real inflation is like 7 to 10. So you're getting fucked no matter what. So you're getting poorer every single fucking year. And it's compounding as well. It's compounding at 7 to 8 to 10%. So over a decade to 15 years, that's a complete fucking wipeout unless you protect your purchasing power, your fucking work energy, the energy you've put into work that you've traded for money. You have to put it into assets that can't be inflated. You have to put it into things that the government can't just print on a whim. And so a lot of people squirreled away their money into housing. So housing became a speculative asset. Instead of just a house to live in, people used it like the stock market. Buy a house here, take out a loan, it should go up. And those people were playing the game pretty well. Under the rules, if you understood debt and inflation, then yeah, property is a pretty good thing. But that causes property prices to go up drastically. And if you're not already in the property game, or you didn't get in early, it gets exponentially more and more difficult to get in. So property was one of them. The S&P 500 on the US stock exchange, which is the top 500 company, you can see that goes up at about 10% a year, or fucking, let's say 7% a year, 8% a year. If you just buy the top 500 companies on the US stock exchange, the S&P, you don't fully cover inflation for all those years, but you're protecting your wealth. You can also buy gold. Obviously, the best one is Bitcoin, but yeah, that's the only way you can do it. If you're just sitting there and trying to save your money, you're fucked. But the problem is, like, we're coming to a stage now where the debt is so overwhelming that there's going to be a violent correction. It is going to wipe I don't even know. It's going to wipe fucking shit out. So that's why everyone's poor, because basically inflation, expansion of the money supply. And unfortunately, if you are working a 9 to 5 or just a job, unless you're getting a fucking 8% raise per year, there's no way you can outrun inflation. So every single year you're getting poorer unless you work 8% harder. every single year. And some years, like during COVID, you got to work 20% harder in that year just to stay normal because of the money printing. I need you to understand it's the money printing. And the money printing can be just from the government, but also money printing is loans and debt for housing and shit like that. Creation of any money. It can be banking creation or it can be from the Federal Reserve. So, is there a way out? I'm glad you asked because I feel like I haven't mentioned the way out 400,000 times in the last let's say 3 years or 4 years. I feel like I may have mentioned the way out. The way out, the only way out is Bitcoin. There's absolutely no other way. There's ways to protect your fucking wealth if you have any, and you can buy gold. That's good. You can buy silver. I feel like property is about to fucking implode, but you can also do that. You can do the normal things, and that might protect you to a certain extent. But like property, like who wants the burden of a fucking loan hanging over their head for 30 years? It's good to have the leverage, I suppose, but fuck that. Anyway, none of that is going to work long term because the system is fundamentally broken. So what needs to happen, there needs to be a migration to a completely different monetary system, an honest, true ledger that cannot be changed, and a currency or money that cannot be printed, inflated. Even gold's inflated. Gold, they expand, well, through new mining, gold inflation is about 1.5 to 2% a year. So even though that's low, in 50 years, you've still wiped out most of your wealth. Like I think it's like 50 or 80%, something like that. Bitcoin is completely different. Bitcoin has a fixed money supply. So what's going to happen over time is everything in the world economy is going to sit inside Bitcoin. So what you need to do is you need to get even just a little bit. You need to have some. And if you're on the poorer side, it's literally your only hope. You just need to put $50, $100 a week or a month, or you just need some. Just don't have none. That's it. So it's inevitable that we are changing from a system that is based on lies and a very sick and corrupt system to the new system, which is Bitcoin, which is trustless, honest, immutable, indestructible. So that's it. That's why I don't get really depressed or like upset about any of this, because like there's Bitcoin. If there was no Bitcoin, I would be the most miserable, the most miserable cunt ever, because there's no other fucking way out. There's literally nothing else. Like there's no way we can escape this control system without Bitcoin. That's what I'm like. That's why I find it so important. That's why I been, even though it's to my great detriment because people just start tuning out and dropping off, but I feel like I just have to keep talking about it every now and then for the people who do catch on. It's more important to me to help people like get to the Bitcoin thing than it is for me to have like 1 million followers or whatever the fuck it is. If I can help like 100 people get like into the Bitcoin, then I will have done my job. I'll feel satisfied with that. So yeah, that's a little rundown of the history of how fucked we are. And Bitcoin's the only way out. It's the only way out. So thanks for your question, Jen. Go buy some fucking Bitcoin. I think I sent you fucking $10 a bitty. Get on it. Fucking. That'll do for tonight, and I'll see you the fuck later.